Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm Ben Jones, your host, and today we have a very special guest, someone that I think you are going to get a lot of value from, that is truly brilliant at what she does and has amazing success. And so really, like today, as we get into this, we have a very special interview with Dr. Christy Alexon, who is someone that actually was one of my nutrition professors back in the day when I was at Arizona State University going through my dietetics degree. And, she was always one that stood out because, she was one that's actually really practiced what she preached. And beyond being just incredibly smart, she has won all sorts of accolades from first starting off as an endurance athlete, running multiple marathons, and then transitioning into strength training, and even now doing bikini competitions, competing at the NPC level, and having won multiple competitions, and to where she just brings a wealth of knowledge. And so with that, Christy, I want to welcome you to the show.
Nice to hear that. Yeah. I'm going to listen to this recording every morning when I get up just to be like, okay, I'm feeling extra awesome.
Yes, I know. Absolutely. So I know that, this is, I'm excited that we're able to do this. And I think for just everyone being able to get to know you, and you've got such an incredible background, but like, what's your story? Starting from just where were you as, childhood, and where was that turning point for fitness? And just so everybody knows where you kind of started.
Absolutely. I would say I'm a good example of you don't have to be an athlete from the time you're born. I basically lived most of my childhood, teenage, and adult life up until about, close to 30, thinking I'm just not athletic and I'll never compete in sports, It's funny because actually when I was a kid, I just, like I said, wasn't the most coordinated soul. And I didn't really like sports. I think I wasn't maybe good at it. I was really good at academics. Like I, graduated salutatorian second in my high school class, got a full academic scholarship. The academic part was always easy for me, but I never really saw myself as having any athletic potential at all. And so I didn't really like run even or do things like that. And I remember in high school, we were forced to run the mile in PE. And I think after that first semester, I'm like, I'm not doing this again. I'm going to join a sport to get out and running the mile. So I chose golf. And the only reason why I think I was any good at golf is because the ball is not moving when you're trying to run it. Versus like softball or something where the ball is in motion and you have to I would miss it every time.
Surprisingly, I've just seen from my own experience, it is quite challenging just trying to hit a golf ball. There's a lot of technique to go into it. So.
Yes. And my dad was the golfer, of the family. So he taught me how to golf. And even to this day, we'll go play together sometimes. And I wasn't very strong, because I didn't do anything to get stronger. So golf was like, although having some nice forearm strength does help you in golf, that was like the sport that I was okay at, I guess. So it's kind of funny to see, well, how did I go from that to running, 13 half marathons, 2 full marathons, competing in powerlifting, competing in bodybuilding. And I guess how it all started, I guess, is I always loved nutrition. And I did think it was fascinating to see people in really amazing shape. And I wondered how they do that, So I kind of continued to, my bachelor's and master's degree were in nutrition. And then for my Ph.D, I did want to learn more about the training side. So I branched out and did a Ph.D that combined nutrition and, exercise science. So I got all the academic side first. And then after I, finished my doctorate, I had a child during that time. So I was either pregnant or my daughter was breastfeeding the whole PhD program. So there wasn't a lot of time for exercise. I'm not, proud to say that. I could have, that's an excuse. I could have squeezed it in, but it wasn't a priority. Let's put it that way. So after I finished my doctorate, I'm like, I am ready to start implementing this stuff that I've been learning about. And where I work at Arizona State University, they needed a faculty team to run in this competition. It was like a charity event. And they said, you can either do the 5K or you can do the half marathon. And I actually had to look up what the distance of a 5K was because I'm like, oh, that's not enough. I'm like, I can do the 13.1 miles. I can train for a half marathon. So I downloaded this little program and it had you run 3 times a week. and progressively increase the distance. And honestly, the first run was the hardest. The first run, I think, was 3 miles, and I thought I was going to die. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to stick with it because my boss needs people to do this. Like, it was for kind of my job. It was a volunteer thing. And I was amazed at how the human body adapts. And after, a couple of weeks, I'm like, 3 miles is not hard. And then I can do 5, 6, 7, 8 miles. And I remember the day of the half marathon running that 13 miles. I felt amazing afterwards. And it just shows you how your body does adapt. If you're fueling yourself properly and gradually, pushing yourself, you don't go from 0 running to 13 miles, in one day. But if you gradually do that, and I was amazed at how great I felt. And then I got the running bug, and for 3 years, I did nothing but run and train for half marathons and full marathons.
Well, that's awesome. And, and I think now going from that, because you got the runner's high.
Yeah.
And, where was that point where you transitioned and going to the strength training, and now as going to try to be a professional female athletic or physique competitor, which I believe you're telling me that was the end goal.
Yes.
But what was that thing that made you switch?
Yeah. Well, no matter anything I do in life, like if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And I met my current significant other. He's working on strength training research and all that. And he told me, if you get stronger, you'll be a better runner and you'll be faster. So I was like, okay, I'll strength train then. So he didn't have me do anything, crazy at the beginning because I was still running a lot. But then as I started to strength train, I found that kind of, like you said, that runner's high that you get after maybe running 10 miles, I could get that pretty quickly with a set of 5 on a heavy deadlift. And it saves you a lot of time. You still get that sense of accomplishment. So yeah, I did both sports for about 2 years. And then I just said, I think I really just love powerlifting more. So we started with the basics: squat, deadlift, bench press, overhead press, lat pull downs, because I couldn't do a chin up at first. I didn't have the upper body strength. And so I went from 0 chin ups to now I can do like 10 chin ups. And it took, a few years to do that. But again, just like with the running, as you stay consistent and continue to challenge yourself just a little bit more each time, you'd be amazed at what you can achieve over the course of, years of staying consistent.
Well, and I think that's another big thing, because now, in what ways, when you made that shift from running, just doing lots of cardio,
right,
to doing purely strength training, what ways did you see your body change?
Yeah, I had muscle for the first time. What's crazy is because I participated in nutrition research as a doctoral student, I would hop in the DEXA and see what my body composition was like. And before I started running, I was what you would call, like, not to use a demeaning term, but like you've heard of people saying, well, I'm skinny fat, right? Like I'm a size 0, but I'm almost 30% body fat. How is that even possible? I had like hardly any muscle. I mean, I had enough to move around, but that was probably about it. So when I saw that, I'm like, that's kind of a lot of fat, not much muscle. I could do better. So I started running, and that lowered my percent body fat. I think I went from like 29% down to like 25%. I wasn't trying to like get jacked running. I mean, I know it doesn't work that way, but it did, improve my body composition. Then when I started powerlifting, not even doing what you would consider traditional hypertrophy training, like I was training in a very low rep range, like 3 to 5 reps on some exercises. I went down to like 22% body fat and built more muscle. And now that I've kind of switched from powerlifting to bodybuilding, I can maintain pretty easily anywhere from 18 to 20% body fat, and then going lower just once a year for getting on stage. And I'm really pushing myself to get ultra lean, but I only do that once a year because it's not healthy for a female especially, to be like 15% body fat all the time. That's low for a woman. For a man, that's not bad, but for a female, it's pretty low.
Absolutely. And I think that's the big thing. So when you're trying to step on stage, so the goal is to get to about 15%, which you're right. That's and I think this is a big thing too, especially with so many of our clients. This is a common thing that we see, is that there's this belief that doing long steady state cardio is the key to burning fat, but yet we try there's this almost this myth that's out there, And I just think, especially because now, even after going through all this that you do, you have your own clients for nutrition coaching, workout coaching.
Right.
And I just think for people that have this belief that they need to get onto a treadmill for 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes, do all this running, and that they're afraid of lifting heavy weights, especially for women. Maybe debunk that. If you want to get the clinical side of things.
Your best bet for changing your body composition, you want to build muscle, lose body fat, strength training 100% is the way to go. Cardio, will improve your cardiovascular fitness, and you may lose some body weight, but you're not going to build any muscle. And when you have more muscle, that's what changes the shape of your body. If you want that hourglass shape, it's like, oh, well, you need to build some muscle in your shoulders and your glutes, it makes your waist look smaller. And, if your goal is aesthetics, let's say, but for overall health too, you want to have more muscle, because for every decade after age 30 that you are not strength training, you can plan, every 10 years losing probably like 3 to 5% of your muscle mass. Like, we're very good about educating people about age-related bone loss, osteoporosis, but we don't talk about age-related muscle loss or sarcopenia. And that's something that the more you go on without doing, strength training, is you're going to be losing muscle mass, after about age 30. And, I'm 40 years old, and I don't want to lose muscle. I want to gain muscle, and it not only improves your aesthetic appearance, but for your overall health. It's a big deal. So yeah, the cardio, you obviously want to do something for conditioning and to maintain your fitness, but you can go out and, the beautiful trails and go hiking or walk your dog, speed walk a little bit. Like, hours on the treadmill is not the way to probably get the body that you want or the health change that you want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You bring up such a huge thing with muscle mass, because this is, honestly, if you look at it from a metabolic standpoint, that your muscle is much more metabolically active than fat. And this is especially as we talk about aging, and you look at it hormonally. If people are losing muscle as they age, then that means they're slowing down their metabolism. And it's just this cascade of negative effects, right?
Right.
And so, I think with that is like even kind of looking at some of your clients, because now you are a nutrition coach for RP Strength. Is that correct?
Yep. Renaissance Periodization. I do nutrition coaching through them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, I know that you work with a lot of clients there. And I would just say for a lot of the people that, you just see, what are some of the sticking points, maybe some common things that when they're getting started, or, maybe even just beliefs like what we just talked about, the cardio is the best way of losing weight.
Right.
What are some of these things that you've seen that you've, just common things, advice that could be helpful?
Totally. The biggest thing is when it comes to creating the calorie deficit needed for fat loss, cardio is one way to do that, but it's not the best way. The most efficient way is to look at your diet, right? And look at, okay, how much fat am I getting? How much protein? How many carbs? And you want to have a certain amount of calorie deficit, but not too large of a deficit, especially off the bat, because then you're going to be insanely hungry. And then you go into this cycle of like restrict and binge, binge and restrict. We don't want that. We want to start off with, let's find a healthy, balanced way of eating that gets you in a state of negative fat balance. And what that means is the grams of fat that you are consuming is less than the grams of fat that you are burning each day, so your body has to make up the difference by losing body fat. So, you look at overall calories, but I also encourage people, not that you have to do a super low fat diet, but the problem is with a lot of high fat foods, like the craveable foods, they're also high in carbs, so you're eating high carb, high fat, and it's hard to create a calorie deficit in that type of state. And those foods also aren't very satisfying a lot of times, so I focus on, okay, cardio is a tool to help support us, but sometimes I don't even prescribe set cardio. I'm just like, let's track your steps and see how much you're walking each day. The problem with modern day society, I guess, is that we've engineered the physical activity pretty much out of our lives. Like, you can literally get out of bed, and now you don't even have to get in your car and drive to work. A lot of us are working from home, and then you sit at a desk for like 8 hours, and then it's just like you're just not moving enough, so I spend a lot of time at the computer for my work, but I have a desk treadmill. So I'm walking at like 1 mile an hour the whole time I'm working. And, I'm walking my dog, I'm moving more. So a lot of times I encourage people to move more to support that, but not fall into the trap that I have to do hours and hours of cardio in order to lose body fat. If you're moving enough, I would say at least 10,000 steps a day. More might be better in a fat loss phase to kind of helps you keep more food for longer. So if you can up your steps to like 12 or 15,000, we might not have to cut your calories as low to get you to lose a certain amount of body fat. But not overdoing the cardio and really focusing on the macronutrient balance of the diet and finding that sweet spot in the calorie deficit where it's not so deep that you are insanely hungry and you're like going to bite off your own arm and eat it. Or, eat an entire box of Oreos because you've had a bad day. But finding that kind of that just right. There really is a sweet spot for most people. And sometimes it takes working with the coach one-on-one to find it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know we were talking about before the show started, just some myths around nutrition.
Yes.
What are some of the biggest myths that you would like to debunk?
Yeah. One that you can't eat carbs.
Okay.
I built, to build muscle requires fuel for the workout and the recovery. And, I'm a fairly small person. I've eaten 350 grams of carbs a day, and lost body fat on that, so carbs are not the enemy. They are an excellent fuel source, great for your recovery. That's a big one. Another big one, and this is where it gets kind of dicey, but people are really getting into the intermittent fasting. And there's definitely some research to show it can be beneficial. But if you are intermittent fasting in a way where you don't eat anything all day, and then you have a giant meal at night and tend to overconsume because you haven't been fueling your body throughout the day, that does not work.
Well, all right. Now, I this is something that I know I've given this talk to a lot of our clients.
Yeah.
I call this the sumo wrestler diet. So, and for everyone, if you don't know, what she just described was actually how sumo wrestlers intentionally try to put on fat, as they don't eat anything all day. It lowers their metabolic rate, and then they have this huge meal at night right before they go to bed, and so a lot of that gets stored as fat. But,
Yeah.
Christy, maybe you can elaborate a bit more on this, and just even talking about intermittent fasting, because there's a lot of fat diets and different things. And
Yeah.
maybe talk through on some of the ways, like if people want to do this, what would be the right way, and what is the wrong way?
Yeah. So some of the research, they call it time restricted feeding is what it's called in the research literature. And there is some good research to show if you eat your food in like a 12-hour window, let's say from like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., that seems to be pretty beneficial versus, eating from, 4 a.m. till 4 a.m. the next day. So there is some potential benefit to having like a certain window, If I have clients that are working out later in the day, especially, there is some benefit to having like a little extra protein before they go to bed at night to help with their recovery. But if they're morning exercisers, they don't necessarily have to have like a protein bedtime snack. So I do kind of tailor the approach based on when someone is training. But yeah, like I would say, eating over 12 to 14 hour window during the day or, perfectly fine. All of us do intermittent fasting at night when we're sleeping. So you should be sleeping for around 8 hours. If you're only sleeping 5 or 6 hours, you have bigger problems. You need to focus on your sleep.
Let's sit on that for a second, because I think this is an often overlooked area of health and wellness.
Yeah.
Is sleep.
Yes.
And as you just said, so what are some of the impacts? People are
Yeah.
consistently operating on 5-6 hours of sleep and not getting a full 7 to 9 hours.
Yeah.
It's the sweet spot.
Yeah. And you talk about like the challenges that clients face. One is the limiting belief that their diet, like they can't have carbs or they have to fat starve themselves all day and just eat later. The other big thing is they'll be following everything. They're, hitting their steps, their workouts, their macros, and they are not losing weight. And a lot of times it's because of a stress response from inadequate sleep. So, you don't build muscle when you're working out, you build it when you're recovering from that workout. And sleep is huge for your recovery. And so what I tell people is if you're in a place where you're only sleeping 5 hours a night, and you don't have like a baby or something, that's really sleep is kind of beyond your control at that point. If you have an infant, or a toddler. But those are my clients that I really struggle. It's like, it's out of their control, so I'm like, all right, you're going to have to figure out where you get a nap, like things like that. But yeah, get your sleep in order first, because when you don't sleep enough, your hunger hormones get all thrown out of whack. You're going to be hungrier. You're going to have a harder time sticking to your diet. Your body is craving energy. And so they've done multiple research studies to show that when you are sleep deprived, you eat more the next day to try to, make up for that. So, yeah.
All right. That totally makes sense. Now, what about just, all right, so as a dietitian, a PhD, and, teaching, I mean, at this point, I would assume thousands of students during your tenure at ASU. What are probably some of the most interesting nutrition facts or unknown things that just in your research that most people don't know about?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. Well, my dissertation really focused on blood glucose control and fat oxidation. So I was interested in, what helps keep your blood sugar under better control, might help you burn more fat. And there's a lot of research on acetic acid in vinegar. So looking at vinegar, if you have 1 to 2 tablespoons before like a starchy meal, it actually keeps your blood glucose from spiking as high. And we have articles, my mentor, Dr. Carol Johnston, has articles published in Diabetes Care looking at how doing vinegar even before bedtime could help lower their blood sugar the next morning. So if you have issues with glycemic control, vinegar is a big one. I'm trying to think other like fun kind of facts in nutrition. In terms of like supplements, like vitamins and minerals, I do think that sometimes people might not realize that their thyroid is functioning suboptimally. And I don't mean that they're like full-blown have hypothyroidism, but there's a lot of research to show that, so like selenium and iodine are very important for your thyroid. And just taking a supplement of 200 micrograms a day of selenium helps improve thyroid function in people that, were not necessarily like hypothyroid, but maybe on like the lower end of normal, Selenium is a mineral that's very depleted in our soil. And, unless you're eating like Brazil nuts every day.
It's funny you say that, because that is something that, I've actually recommended for help a lot of our clients. It's 3 Brazil nuts in the morning and evening.
Yeah.
Yeah, that very reason.
Yep. Well, and I'm, maybe I just, maybe I should try, but sometimes I'm like, were these Brazil nuts grown in a selenium-rich soil? So I just take the 200 micrograms from my little supplement, and because there's like a debate in the medical world of like, what range should your TSH, your thyroid stimulating hormone, what should it be? Like, you want it on the lower end, because if it's higher, that means your thyroid is underactive, right? So thyroid stimulating hormone is high when your thyroid is, I know you know this, but for those of you that don't know, you don't want a high TSH, you want a low TSH, and yeah, the research is pretty consistent that just that little extra 200 micrograms of selenium a day helps bring it down. It also lowers your risk if you have like a family history of Hashimoto's or autoimmune type thyroid conditions. Selenium is a big one. Also vitamin D. I think that is another kind of undersold, type of supplement, because we don't go out in the sun very much, because again, we don't have physical jobs where we're outside working on a farm, like we were historically maybe. And so supplementing vitamin D is a very good idea. Most people, I'd probably say at least 2,000 IUs, international units a day. Get your levels checked, of course. But vitamin D essential for hormone production, all of that. And also plays a role in some of these autoimmune. So my mom has Hashimoto's, autoimmune thyroid disease. So of course, I'm like searching that up, like, okay, got to keep my vitamin D on point, my selenium. But it's becoming more and more common. So I'm glad I can, share that with my clients on what are some little things you can do to just kind of optimize everything from a hormonal perspective, how your body is functioning. Because you're doing your part with the diet and exercise, but you don't want anything else to be holding you back. So we want to check for those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a huge thing, especially with a big part of this podcast is talking about hormones.
Right.
And, I think especially this is an issue I see a lot of doctors are quick to put people onto hormone replacement. But really what's going on, it's more of a nutritional deficiency.
Yeah.
And I mean, just, maybe that's something you could speak to and as what you've seen on a clinical side on that.
Yeah, totally. I definitely have a lot of clients that I will refer them to physicians who specialize in that. in terms of what you can do from a natural standpoint. So like me, I'm trying to maximize my ability to grow muscle. One thing I did was I got off of birth control, because I'm taking all these extra estrogens that my body doesn't need. I'm not saying please talk to your doctor before doing any of this, but for me personally, I was like, okay, I can get off of this and see what can I do to kind of optimize my testosterone naturally. I am a natural athlete, it's not required in the NPC. They don't drug test anyone, so you can do whatever you want. But me personally, I wanted to see, well, what could I do to maximize my ability to build muscle naturally? So getting off of birth control was one thing that I did. So I'm not taking those synthetic estrogens. I also looked at like ashwagandha root. So I take 600 milligrams of that every night. And there's some research to show how it can naturally increase testosterone levels in women, not to the point that you're going to have issues with excess hair growth and things like that, but like an improved sexual health in women. So, little things like that you can do naturally with your diet that can potentially help.
Well, and you're hitting on a big point. I think especially with some of the listeners that are women, hearing you talk about testosterone, the male hormone.
Right.
And that's just as, both men need estrogen, women also need testosterone. And maybe talk through that a little bit, because I think that's another myth that's out there, that testosterone maybe is bad for women.
Right. Yeah, no, it's good, like I said, you want to go to physician, get your hormones checked. If your testosterone is too low, you are not going to be feeling very great. Like as a woman, yes, as a woman. Now, you should not be at the level that a man should be, but you will probably have like no sex drive, for one, if your testosterone is low. It will affect your mood, your energy levels so much. And I would say is, definitely invest in, going to the right physician who's going to look at everything, the overall balance of all your hormones, from your thyroid to all your sex hormones, your estrogen, your progesterone. Because a lot of times women have low progesterone, and that can also lead to like things like hair loss and things like that. So, I'm not a physician, so I don't want to overstep my bounds, but, paying attention to your hormonal health is very important. And testosterone is not just for, yes, we associate as being a male hormone, but you should have testosterone as a female. And I, know a lot of women that I've worked with where, we've done what we can nutritionally, but sometimes they do need a little extra pharmacological help. And it's unbelievable the difference that it makes in their quality of life. So, yeah.
That's super valuable.
Yeah.
Because I think with hormones especially, a lot of things you bring up, it's the same for men and women,
right.
Especially when you look at testosterone, and has a huge impact there. So I think as we're wrapping up here, some final questions, some fun questions. First, what's just a fun random fact that no one knows about yet?
Oh gosh. So I think so. I really love animals a lot, and I've probably owned every type of animal that's illegal to own. I haven't had like a giraffe or anything like that, but everything from birds, fish, snakes, dogs. I never had a cat because my dad was allergic to cats growing up, and I think I might be allergic too, but I would totally adopt one still. And my dream is to someday have like a no-kill animal shelter, and like foster dogs occasionally. Problem is I end up keeping them.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's fine. Because how many dogs do you have right now?
Right now I have 3, but it will soon be 4 again. I'd like to have a minimum of 4 dogs at any given time.
All right. I like it. Well, last question for you, and I think is you're living your passion.
Yes.
So something you love, you get to help a lot of people. And I think with that, like, at the end of your life, what's the legacy you want to leave?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the legacy that I would want to leave, it's something I think most people want, is if anyone's life is better because you were in it, then you've done something right, And a lot of times we can limit it to, our children, but, maybe you don't have kids. And even if you don't, like, there's so many ways to help. There's so many people in need, and we all have something that we can give of value to another person. And so if I've done that, if even just one life is better, and that's the cool thing about what I do, is I get people telling me all the time, like, how much their lives have improved as a result of, me working with them and all that. And what's cool is that they've done the same for me, So I learn from every single client I have there's this saying, you know, when one teaches, two learn. It's the same thing with my students. Like, yes, I'm teaching them, but they're also teaching me at the same time.
Absolutely.
So it's really
That is super powerful. I love it.
Yeah.
So everyone, Christy, I just want to say a huge thank you for being on the show today. Now, for anybody that wants to get in touch with you or follow you, because you put out a lot of valuable content.
Yes.
Just
Lots of pictures of my food, everyone.
Yes. What would be the best place for them to follow you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. It's Dr. Christy, Christy, Alexon, Alexon. So at Dr. Christy Alexon. Follow me on Instagram, and you can see my pictures of my food, and I post my food and my workouts on my Instagram stories, and also lots of dog pictures. So if you don't like dogs, you probably should follow me, because you're going to get dog content whether you want it or not.
I like it. Well, Christy, I really appreciate you being on the show. I know that everyone's going to get a lot of value out of this. And friends, make sure that you like this, share it. If you got value out of this today, put so in the comments, and, send this to someone that you think can help. You're hearing from someone that is truly an expert in the industry, and I know can help a lot of people. So give her a follow, comment if you got value out of this, share it to someone, and we'll see you on the next episode.